Hey everyone! Welcome to Update X24H, your go-to channel for the latest news, hottest dramas, breaking stories, and all the buzz from the world of entertainment. We're here to keep you updated, entertained, and always in the loop. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing family, because here at Update X24H, we bring you the news that matters, the drama you love, and the stories you can't miss. Thanks for being part of our community. Let's stay connected, stay updated, and keep the good vibes rolling. In a world where fame glitters brighter than the stars themselves, truth often hides in the shadows. But what happens when the most powerful voices in China's entertainment industry unite? Not for fame, not for money, but for justice. This is the Truth Files, a secret mission that would bring together China's biggest A-list stars, risking everything to expose what really happened to beloved actor and singer Menglong. What began as whispers and encrypted chats would soon become a movement, a story of courage, unity, and the unstoppable light of truth. In the beginning, there was silence, the kind of silence that follows tragedy, heavy and suffocating. When the news of Menglong's passing broke, the entertainment world froze. Cameras stopped, sets emptied, and countless hearts struggled to comprehend how someone so full of life could vanish overnight. The official report spoke of an accident, but for those who knew him, the colleagues who had worked beside him, the friends who had shared laughter and long days under blinding studio lights, something felt wrong. It wasn't the kind of doubt born from gossip, but a quiet intuition that truth had been buried under the noise of convenience. Among his circle, fragments of information began to resurface. Deleted photos, private recordings, small inconsistencies that most would overlook. One of them was a video found on his phone, grainy and imperfect, filmed in the hours before his death. It showed Menglong sitting alone, speaking softly into the camera. He didn't seem afraid, just tired, as if carrying a burden too heavy to share. He ended the recording with a line that would later echo across millions of screens. Even in the dark, truth will always find its way. Those words became the first spark that ignited a fire no amount of censorship could extinguish. The people who stumbled upon this footage didn't treat it as sensational evidence. They treated it as a final message, a plea for honesty in a world addicted to appearances. As the clip quietly circulated among close friends and trusted colleagues, it awakened something deeper than curiosity. It awakened responsibility. For years, Menglong had been admired not only for his artistry but for his integrity. He was known as the actor who stayed late to comfort nervous extras, who thanked crew members by name, who never allowed fame to change his manners. To those who respected him, ignoring the inconsistencies surrounding his death would have been a betrayal of everything he represented. So the questions began softly at first. Why were certain security tapes missing? Why did medical documents show altered timestamps? Why did witnesses, once vocal, suddenly refuse to speak? Each answer only deepened the mystery. And yet, this wasn't a story about conspiracy, it was about conscience. In the heart of China's glittering entertainment world, a few individuals began to understand that uncovering the truth was not an act of rebellion, but an act of love. That love gave birth to what would later be known as the Truth Files. But in its earliest form, it was simply a group of grieving souls searching for meaning. They didn't seek revenge or spectacle. They sought understanding for themselves, for the fans who adored him, and for a man whose final message was a whisper of hope in a world of noise. The spark of truth was not a revelation of facts, but a restoration of humanity. It reminded everyone that beneath the fame, beneath the lights, beneath the silence, there was still a beating heart that refused to be forgotten. In the aftermath of that haunting discovery, a quiet movement began to take shape, unplanned, unannounced, and yet unstoppable. It didn't begin with a meeting or a declaration, but with a shared silence among those who felt the same invisible pull. In studios, backstage corridors, and empty dressing rooms, whispers traveled like static in the air. There were people who couldn't sleep, people who couldn't accept the narrative handed to them. They were not rebels or heroes. They were witnesses, artists who had seen too much of how stories are written, edited, and erased. And in that silence, they recognized one another. Among them were names that had once defined modern Chinese entertainment: Wang Yiba, Xiao Zhan, Dylan Wang, Shen Yu, Zhao Lucy, Tan Songyun, and Su Kai. Each of them came from different backgrounds, different genres, different kinds of fame. Yet beneath the surface, they shared a bond that fame itself could never break. gratitude toward Menglong, who had once been a quiet mentor, a bridge, and a reminder that kindness still had a place in an industry built on masks. When they saw how easily his story was being rewritten, they realized that silence was no longer safety, it was complicity. They began to reach out discreetly, using coded phrases and encrypted messages. Old friendships were rekindled through the simplest of words. Are you awake? Meetings were disguised as casual dinners or charity planning sessions. They spoke in half sentences and unspoken acknowledgments, aware that even the walls might have ears. Each brought something different. One had access to raw footage from the set you last filmed. Another had a contact in post-production who remembered the missing files, and someone else had photographs that didn't match the official reports. Every piece of evidence was small, fragile, incomplete. But together they began to form a map. What united them wasn't anger but devotion. They weren't chasing headlines or revenge. They were defending memory. They wanted to restore dignity to a man who had once believed that truth mattered more than popularity. In a world obsessed with control, their alliance was a rare act of faith. A belief that integrity could still exist behind the curtains. They built their network quietly, like architects of light, layering trust over fear. And although they knew the dangers, blacklists, censorship, professional ruin, they also knew there were worse fates than losing a career. Losing one's humanity was one of them. As the alliance grew, others joined. Not actors this time, but makeup artists, editors, and assistants who had known you in his final months. They brought with them fragments of truth, emails, deleted texts, recordings whispered late at night. None of them expected justice to come easily. But every small act of courage mattered. Every secret shared became another thread woven into something larger, something unbreakable. They called it the Truth Files, but in those early days it was something simpler. A promise whispered between friends, that they would not let the world forget. In the stillness of that pact, they understood that the fight for truth was never loud. It was quiet, patient, and deeply human. And though the alliance was silent, its purpose resounded like a heartbeat beneath the noise of an industry built to drown it out. When the day of revelation finally came, it did not begin with noise or spectacle. There were no announcements, no hints, no warnings. Only a quiet pulse of anticipation shared between those who knew what was about to happen. On a cold October afternoon, as the city carried on in its usual rhythm of traffic and chatter, a single video appeared online. The title was simple: For You. There was no author, no watermark, no traceable signature. But for those who had followed the story, those words were enough. Within seconds, screens around the world flickered to life, and what unfolded before millions of eyes was not scandal. It was truth in its rawest form. The footage began with a still image of Menglong, smiling faintly in the soft glow of a studio light. Then, without transition, the images changed: security camera clips, medical files, phone logs, and fragments of conversations. Each piece was ordinary in isolation, but together they formed a pattern that could no longer be ignored. There were timestamps that didn't align, figures that appeared where they shouldn't have, and signatures that bore no resemblance to the originals. It was as if someone had rewritten his final days with a trembling hand and hoped no one would notice. Yet someone did. The narration was computerized, distorted beyond recognition, but calm and deliberate. Did not accuse. Simply presented. It said, "Let truth speak for itself." That phrase, simple, stripped of emotion, carried more power than any outburst could. Because in that moment, the world wasn't hearing a conspiracy. It was witnessing clarity. The tone of the video reflected what the alliance had promised. No drama, no hatred, only evidence. And as it played, millions of viewers felt something shift. Not just disbelief, but awakening. The kind of awakening that comes when light finally pierces a locked room. Social media erupted within minutes. Hashtags began trending across continents. Hashtag justice for Menglong, hashtag truth files, hashtag light over silence. Fans from Seoul to Paris, from Manila to Los Angeles, began to piece together the puzzle themselves. Journalists tried to verify, governments scrambled to contain, but the files had already spread too far. Every time one link was deleted, 5 more appeared. People weren't just watching, they were preserving. They were backing up the truth, ensuring that it could never again be buried. In those chaotic hours, something extraordinary happened. The entertainment world, long accustomed to silence, began to speak. Actors, musicians, and producers posted cryptic messages. White feathers, blank squares, the words for you. It was a digital act of defiance, subtle but unmistakable. The world had turned into a chorus of witnesses. The truth, once fragile and forbidden, had become unstoppable. By the end of that day, the Truth Files was no longer just a leak, it was a revolution of transparency. It was proof that collective courage could outpace suppression, that compassion could triumph over fear. The unveiling was not about exposing villains but reclaiming dignity. And as the final seconds of the video faded to black, the message appeared one last time. For you. It was not addressed to one person. It was for everyone who still believed that truth, once spoken, could change everything. Of course, truth rarely comes without a cost. Endorsements vanished overnight. Social accounts went silent. Several dramas were postponed indefinitely. But this time, fans didn't fall into despair. They stood taller. They organized digital vigils, lit candles in Seoul, Tokyo, Paris, and Los Angeles, and flooded timelines with messages of solidarity. You silenced them, but you cannot silence us. Even as official statements called the footage fabricated, the global audience had already seen enough to believe otherwise. And in that belief, a quiet revolution was born. Weeks later, the movement evolved beyond one man's tragedy. It became a call for transparency, compassion, and respect in the entertainment world. Fans began fundraising for mental health programs in Menglong's name. Independent filmmakers pledged to create safer working spaces. Even under pressure, the stars who started it all refused to back down. They didn't shout or blame. They simply stood in silence, allowing their actions to echo louder than words. And as one anonymous post beautifully wrote beneath a deleted clip, they tried to silence the stars, but they only made the truth shine brighter. That line would become the heart of a global movement. The Truth Files is no longer just a file. It's a reminder that integrity is louder than fear, that friendship outlives fame, and that the truth, once uncovered, never dies. If you believe that light should never be hidden, join us. Subscribe, share, and stay connected as we continue to tell the stories that matter. Thank you for watching, and remember, when courage speaks, even silence becomes powerful.